in a whole different world.
I see 2 others have joined us, so why don't we go ahead and get started? Because I know we have a lot to talk about today, and let's say welcome everyone, and happy spring. I think last time we met it was cold and rainy, so at least the cherry blossoms or the magnolias or things that helps my attitude a little bit, not a lot sometimes, but helps a little bit. And I don't see any new faces today, so Michelle, do you know everybody already?
Not everyone, no.
Okay, because I know different people are here at different times. Tell you what, why don't we take a second and say hello. I'm Diana Bailey. I'm retired from the Maryland State Department of Education. I was in correctional education, doing workforce and transition services, and then I have been a TA coach for U.S. Department of Labor reentry grants until the end of March, and then that was the end of that. So I'm not sure what happens after that. So I was asked to chair this subgroup. And why don't I start with Danielle, because you're the top of my box. Do you mind?
Sure. Really quickly, though, Diana is a CTE guru and one of the best people that could possibly lead this group. So, Danielle Cox, Director of Education for DPSCS.
Steve, you're in the next box.
Danielle, introduce somebody. Yes.
Oh, okay. Ainsley, why don't you go? You're next on my thing.
Hi, I am Ainsley. I'm from the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy, and I am the staff person for this commission. Adam, do you want to go next?
Yes, my name is Adam Cummings. I was the representative for MCE. I have since moved over to the Office of the Correctional Ombudsman as the executive administrator.
Introduce somebody, Adam.
You, Stephen.
Okay. Okay. Hi, I'm Steve Stewart, and I also retired from Maryland Department of Education many moons ago. I was the academic coordinator, and I also, at the time, had a promotion from the state. I was the executive director of the Correctional Education Association at the same time, and then continued that after I retired. Then I retired from CEA about 10 years ago. So, and I've continued being an advocate for prison education, and just happy to see all of you here today. And so, John, why don't you go, and then you can introduce. You got your volume off. It's still off. You got it yet? Okay, so why don't I'll ask Richard, and then we come back. Richard Gibson, please.
Yeah, so my name is Richard Gibson. I'm a retired police commander from Baltimore and a deputy chief out in Westminster. I started working for the state a couple of years ago with the Department of Public Safety Correctional Services, where I was one of the supervisors in the background investigation unit. I'm now the chief of fraud investigations with the Maryland Insurance Administration. I'm on a couple appointed boards with the governor, and I was also a member of his transition team. I'm also a ethics professor and have a master's degree from Johns Hopkins. So education is very important to me.
Terrific, and welcome. We really needed law enforcement experience on this committee. It relates so much to our work. If you want to introduce the other John, and then maybe we can catch up with John Griffin.
Sure. John Feaster, Deputy Assistant Secretary, Maryland Department of Labor, Division of Workforce Development and Adult Learning, with oversight of correctional education, adult education, workforce development, and monitoring and compliance for the state.
Okay, and Rochelle, I think you were introduced, but
yeah.
Okay, and so John Griffin, have you fixed your sound problem? Okay, John Griffin is with us, and he is a returned citizen who has terrific IT capabilities and just a lot of great ideas, and so he can give an introduction when he gets his sound fixed.
Yeah. And Rochelle, did you want to add a couple other details, since some of us may not know you well?
Oh, sure. No, absolutely. Thank you. I'm Rochelle Rubin. I'm the Director of Correctional Education. You know that we have 4 pillars. We have the academic, transitional, special education, and occupational, which is what I think we're here. I'll be able to lend some voice to that, to this group with today, and looking forward to it. I'm nearing my 2nd year tenure in the position and 20 plus years in education at all levels. My last position was Chief of Schools.
Welcome, welcome. All right, thank you, everyone. And Ainsley, if you wouldn't mind, can you pop up the minutes from last time? And while she's doing that, I'm sure you had a chance to review some of those. Were there any additions or corrections or any areas of clarification you'd like for the February 27th minutes? Thank you for doing those, Ainsley. I know she does them. This is not an AI, so this is the real deal.
Did everybody get copies of that? Because if not, Ainsley can send out copies. So
Yeah, it went out with the invite yesterday too.
yeah, just want to make sure everybody got them. Sometimes they don't see them or that they, couldn't open them or whatever. Okay.
All right. Hearing any comments or questions? Hearing none, do I hear a motion for the approval of the February minutes?
Motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. And you can do a thumbs up like Adam did, or all those in favor say aye or a thumbs up. Okay, we're good. All right. Thank you so much. Approved. You see on the Ainsley will do an update on House Bill 877.
Yeah, so House Bill 877 passed. It was signed by the governor this week. HB 877 gives us until 2029 to finish our work on the commission. So our interim report, we're still going to be doing a really brief interim report, just going over the issues at the end of June, and then doing some recommendations. We're kind of going to go to an annual report form. So giving some recommendations at the end of November, but this commission doesn't expire until 2029. So because of that, we're going to, Dr. Stir and I, along with the work group chairs, are going to sit down and do some more like long-term strategic planning, just to make sure that we're hitting benchmarks and we have a clear goal of what to do with this extra time. So I'm glad that we have that extra time to really dig into this work.
Diane, could I share also what's going on with Delegate Ampry?
Sure.
The bill was such that it created a little bit of confusion in terms of when reports are due and all that. So Delegate Ampry's office is Chief of Staff Ian Genevieve and I have talked, and there's a draft letter that the delegate will give us, hopefully in time for the commission, maybe sooner enough. We'll send out to everybody that explains that we should continue this interim report in June, as Ainsley mentioned, and do the first final report for at the end of this year. We're going to try to get it done by the end of November, so that if there's any kind of implications for legislation that Ampry and others who maybe some of the delegates who are on the commission have time to think about that for the next session. But every year after, we'll continue to do reports, and so that letter's going to try to just the intent of the law and the delegates, the key sponsor of the bill, that his intention about how we should work. He thinks that this work is so important, and it really takes some time to think through a lot of these issues, and it'll give us a lot more time to not only lay out the issues, but maybe tackle them one at a time, or however we decide to do it, and do an in-depth job of making recommendations.
Thank you. John, I see you're back in. Is it working now so you can say hello?
No, I guess not.
No. I'm glad you're here though. Thanks for hanging in. And the chat box, we'll try to watch the chat box too if you have input you'd like to add with us. Okay. Ainsley, you want to talk about the update of the data sharing?
Yes. So last time we received a presentation about the Maryland Longitudinal Data System Center. They gave us some data on employment outcomes post-release. If you haven't seen that presentation, you should really look at it. It's in the Dropbox. It's super informative. The data team at GoCap is working with the Maryland Longitudinal Data Systems Center to hopefully come to a data use sharing agreement so we can continue to be updated on workforce outcomes post release.
Thank you. Let me see if I can. Danielle, something popped up from you. Was that just a reaction or okay?
Yeah, it was just a yay.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, right. Okay. And then update on the site visits. We know there's been some shifts.
Yes, so the site visits, we had some dates that were planned, but we're going to have to reschedule. So those, we are planning on trying to do site visits in July, and hopefully Secretary Scruggs can join us for some of them if she is available. So it's unfortunate that we weren't able to go in April and May, but you know, it would be really cool to have the secretary join us for those July visits once we get those scheduled.
Okay, fine.
The biggest issue was that her or one of our upper level representatives needs to be there if there's a legislator. So we need to just make sure that either she or the assistant secretary is there for that visit.
Okay.
Understood. Okay, thank you. And John put a cute comment. Even IT guys have tech issues, so that doesn't make me feel so bad when I do, and I can't fix them fast enough. All right, let's go on to the some of the issues that were added that will be in the drafted for the interim report. I think, do you all have your agenda nearby, or do you want me to just read through those real quick? Do you have it so you can see them? The lack of transitional instructors, data sharing between MCE, DOL, DPSCS, and MLDSC on employment data outcome. I think we want to have parole and probation in there as well. And that came up yesterday. Creating returning citizen-friendly policies across state agencies, matching program opportunities with training hours required post-release, technical literacy issues, and then any other issues raised. And I think that's where we'd like some of your feedback today. Seeing
Ainsley,
5, yeah.
I think it would be good if we had the agenda up. Ainsley, if you could put it back up. Thank you.
Okay. So there are the 5 or 6 items. Are there other broad items that are not covered there that we have talked about the last couple subgroup meetings? I know we've talked a lot about data, of course, and we've talked a lot about matching the program areas with workforce development trends and needs. We've talked a lot about pre-release and reentry planning and training. Are there other broad categories that are not reflected here? Or that you
I have
want
a
to?
question.
Sure, go ahead.
Will the report focus on what we see as problems in a past time frame, or are we expressing our concerns about problems that should be solved in the future? And the only reason I ask is very specifically the first one, lack of transitional instructors. Yes, that has been a barrier in the past, but we finally received the budget and pins to hire, and they should be hired very soon. So by the time this report comes out, it's probably not going to be a problem anymore. So I'm okay if we're just talking about what's happening in the past, but if we're talking about what's happening in the future, that might be a problem that's already solved.
John, could I, in this interim report, I think we want to list things that we're solving as a commission, let's say. You know, I mean, instead of just putting these are issues, I think we might want to say, because you had mentioned one of the last meetings that if we're solving something, if we brought something up and all of a sudden there's something going in the process to fix it, we should say that. So that it's an up-to-date report, okay? Or if there's an aspect of a problem that's being fixed. I mean, it might be that partial fixes are coming for certain things. So I want to make sure that we do an accurate thing, and so that somebody doesn't come back and say, well, we already did that. Why is it in the report? Okay.
Fair enough. And again, just asking on the framing is, hey, this was a thing in the past? Or is it going to be, hey, we are addressing that in the future? It sounds like we may frame it as we are addressing it.
Okay.
And Rochelle, you have your hand up?
Sure, and I know I haven't been to the past meetings, but just on this specific subject, I do have some updates. So would this be the time to offer those, or?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
All right, fantastic. So we received 6 transitional positions in the governor's budget, and it took some time to get through the process of hiring. But at this juncture, we've now hired for all 6 of those positions. 4 of them will be deployed by region, so Central, Eastern, etc. And they will be assigned to the institutions there. 1 will be the entrepreneur individual. The curriculum for the entrepreneurship program has been written and is complete. That individual begins his tenure on April 30th, which is next week, right? And then the second position is what we're terming a transition counselor. This individual will do case management for the correctional educational program and help to transition. We'll take on a great reentry role within our office. So I wanted to offer those updates to you.
Can you, would you be so kind to maybe send out a brief, I'm very informal, but maybe to everybody, describing that for us? And then, it'd be greatly appreciated. So often we just send out updates among ourselves or to everybody, depending on if it's a committee or the commission, and that, so that we have keep accurate notes on that. Appreciate it.
Okay, will do.
Stephen, is it okay for Rochelle to send that email to either Ainsley directly so that Ainsley, like I know Ainsley has the access to the list of people that.
When she sends it, she can send it to me and Ainsley, and then we can now. Okay, because we're working together. Do it that way. And I mean, sometimes I don't mind if people just send out general information to everybody too. I mean, I don't want this to be so formal and hierarchical.
Danielle, your hand's up.
So am I understanding that correctly? It's just one entrepreneurship program instructor for the whole state? Will they travel around? How's that?
Yes, he's traveling around. He's going to do 6-week increments around the state. That's how we currently have it. We also have a grant that came out of our grant unit for entrepreneurship. And I know that they're in the process of selecting who comes on board. But the input that we had out of correctional education to our colleagues that issued that grant was that it would be great if whoever is finally selected, then we had an additional addendum to the program. So how does this look in the reentry space? So I haven't had a chance to see those applications or see who selected, but I think if we could select someone that sort of follows our transitional instructor and then is actually doing some entrepreneurship work about specifically how do you start your business once you've re-entered into the community, that would be a nice addition to what we have in place. But that is how it's currently structured. Yes.
Are you talking about sorry, Diana, are you talking about the New Start grant?
Yes.
As of right now, there's only one entity that has applied and requested a letter of support from us for that, and they are required to have a letter of support. So, and that is going to be at MCTC and BCCC. That's it.
Yeah, not in my office. I just know, I was just mentioning it from the standpoint of the input that we gave for what would be best paired to what we already have. But I'm saddened to know that there's only been one.
My other question is, like for the core curriculum for the transitional instructors, does that include career assessment and exploration or financial literacy or all those things?
Yes, it does. And it also includes the Shark Tank activity as well, where they have to create their own business plan and all of those things. I think it's well done. I'm not sure how the space is run, but at some point I'd be happy to bring along in our office Dr. Erica Dubose, who was instrumental in writing and putting together the curriculum, and or the instructional teacher once he gets on board. So just let me know.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
And I don't know
Daniel,
if,
you have another comment or question?
yeah, and I don't know if this is something maybe John, Rochelle, we need to talk about, offline, but I know the secretary is getting hammered a lot in the media and by constituents about these type of programs and the lack thereof, and from people behind the fence. So it would be great if, because I had no idea of any of that. So to be able to give my secretary reports so that then she can make comments about, oh no, labor's has hired these people and we have this coming on board and blah, blah, blah. It would be great if we were kind of brought up to date on some of the hiring that is happening around the state.
So
And just to piggyback on that, Danielle, you're right. I think that's not necessarily for this meeting, but the bi-weekly meeting that we have is like the perfect time to iron out what that cadence looks like. Yeah, but agree, we should be on the same page.
Maybe just, if I may, Diana, just insert something here. Ainsley's gonna take a well-deserved week off next week. So anything you send her, send to me first. I mean, copy her because she'll come back and then have a big pile of work on her desk anyway, but at least I'll be able to keep track of things and do whatever I can in the meantime. So.
Do we want to sort of, to the point of our last discussion, we know that interagency communication is essential. You know it. So is that a bullet point we want to increase or enhance interagency communication?
Yes.
So we'll add that as F. Anything else that we need to add?
And I will say, that is becoming better because we are having like John had mentioned, the bi-weekly meetings with labor and GPSCS. So that is, again, one of the things that I think he mentioned was things that are currently happening, that sort of thing. That would definitely be one of those things.
Well, and again, we were talking a little bit yesterday too, when we had our planning meeting for today. All this is so dependent on what funding or grants we have access to. So I'm thinking we need to have some statement here about the critical need for adequate funding that's sustainable. Are those positions, like for example, are those transitional instructors? Did you say, Rochelle, those were PINs?
So yes, those are actual pins that it took quite some time to get. We were very appreciative of getting them. So that's number one. I think the other thing, that the entrepreneurship curriculum had been written prior to my tenure, right? So that was written and there and waiting just for the staffing to come forward and be able to launch that. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
Okay, good.
Okay, so we've added some, we'll wordsmith the language, but funding adequate for the outcomes of the interim report and the long-term sustainability plan. Okay, any other major issues that we have not covered yet?
Are we going to go through all through C, D, E, F like that? Because I have some comments, but I want to make them at the appropriate time.
I'm sorry, Steve, what do you want to say?
We're going to go through, like, we looked at A, and B. Are we going to go through C, D? Because I have comments I want to make on some of them.
I hadn't planned, and those people had a comment. So if you have a comment on any of those items, please go ahead.
Okay, well, one of the things that I wanted to bring up, and I'm not sure where it fits in here, but we got a nice summary of something from Ann Bacchino. We talked about this yesterday in our planning meeting, but she gave an example of, she's working to prepare, people are coming out and they're trying to get jobs, and she gave the example, if people finish the, she used the example barbering, and they still have 300 hours left to do in order to be able to work somewhere, and plus they need tools. And they've run into a real problem with this because nobody knows how to get the 300 hours. They don't get, there's no guidance for that. They don't have money for tools. They're not sure where to get it. And so this, it makes you wonder about, could this be a problem with a lot of the other CT certificates? You get your certificate, your state certificate, whatever. You come out and you're not really ready yet because you still have to do more hours and you don't have the resources for it. You have to have special tools, like if you're in construction or automotive or something. So, I mean, that really puts somebody, one would think, looking at the programs, that, okay, they get their certificate and they're ready to go, but they're really not ready to go because there's so much more that has to be done. And so if this is a problem, I think we need to highlight it, and maybe something that, there are some resources that we're just not aware of, or people are not aware of. I think that's something we really need to talk about. And it's because she's talking about, she's working with 100 different people, and this problem comes up with different areas and not just barbering. So I guess it comes into this transitional reentry situation. And so I don't know, maybe it's an extra item here to come up as an issue, or I'm trying to figure out where it fits in.
It might fit under D, because that's one of the challenges with any CTE program or other or apprenticeship program, is having those matches both with the environment and with the requirement. So maybe when the interim report is done, we can use that and others as examples.
Yeah, you might want to put just a reminder under their example of, like a barbering example of a barbering. People have to do more hours and don't have tools and things.
Mm-hmm.
And this presents an issue for reentry, for success.
Rochelle, I'm not sure who had their hand up first, Rochelle or Danielle, but Rochelle, do you want to go ahead?
No, sure. Thank you. So I wanted to add to what Stephen was saying, that I think another issue. So barbering is a relatively new program. It actually sits in the occupational program, but what's being discussed is the intersectionality between occupational programming and then that transitional space, right? Why those programs have to work hand in hand. Another issue. So I do think, first, to answer the question, I do think once the navigators get involved, I am aware of some resources for our returning citizens to receive tools for the barbering program. So I think navigators have helped them to get connected to the available resources there. However, in addition to the additional hours, the being justice involved and then being able to receive all of the licensures that someone like a barber might want, even to get into the entrepreneurial space, right? To have their own shop and hire that's proving to be extremely difficult. And that's what we saw with the labor market outcomes. And John can certainly attest to this, right? They looked really low for barbering. And we were wondering, well, why do they look so low for barbering? Because we can't staff enough for that, right? It's very popular among the incarcerated individuals. So we know people are using it. We know people are into it. But we're like, why are they not showing up in the labor market? And it has to do with not being able to get some of the licensure. Some people not, reporting their income because of how they're receiving it. Yeah. And so that needs to be something that we find a way to address.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because I remember, and Diana can probably attest to this more than I can. Years ago, we had barbering at MCTC and we had cosmetology at MCIW, and the board would not give licenses to anybody, so the programs were just let go. It just didn't make any sense, and they were very popular programs.
Yeah.
And so I had heard that now the cosmetology board, which I guess regulates all that stuff, has agreed to let people, return citizens, get their licenses. But what you're saying, Rochelle, is that that's still a problem. It falls into that black box that it often is called, with all these regulations, laws, practices, policies by industry, government, whatever, that impediment to getting out there and getting a job. And maybe that's a thing here. As I say this, that maybe that's another issue, the black box, that we should identify, because that's sort of beyond all of our control. But if the commission can make some noise, there might be, to the legislature. I mean, some of the stuff would have to take legislation, and it's, so I'm glad you raised that, Rochelle, because I thought a lot of the stuff is, I guess I'm pretty naive, even at my older age here, had been solved,
Yeah. Danielle?
Yeah, I know that thanks, Rochelle, for getting that rundown of that. But one of the things that we're finding is I have so many currently, like just recently released IIs that are going to different organizations. Those organizations are calling us, and the barbering is a huge one that's coming up over and over and over again, to where they're getting that 900 hours. But then the problem is that they can't go and then continue post-release for those other 300 hours, because there's programs are just not taking them. Either they're full, or they're telling them they have to have the tools first before they could take them into the program. And then I know that specifically Anne brought this up because she's got a couple people in her program that this affects. And we got her connected to Trish Hopkins, the principal at OSTC, because she's got a great barbering program there. And then from what they talked about is apparently the reentry navigator said no one's giving those tools out anymore. No one's paying for them, and they cannot find people to do it anymore in the Baltimore area, that's concerning. Yeah, I actually just got that email a day or two ago. So that is definitely something. And I know it took forever to get the board to just approve the barber stylist license, and now they're saying that, yes, the problem with the regular license for barbering though, Steve, yes, they are approving for returning citizens. However, it's a case by case basis. So it's not necessarily all, guaranteed that they're going to get it. So if they go through all that and go through that program and then they say no, they've just basically wasted all this time in this program and the money and the time, and everything. And another issue is a couple of the organizations that will get them that 300 hours, they have to pay for that to do it.
Right.
In addition, they're not getting paid as a stipend. They're not getting a fee. So they have to work plus then pay for that on like some side time. So it's just, yeah, I think, Rochelle, that's something that's probably definitely we got to look at that what that looks like post-release. Because you're right, it is a popular program. We're getting massive outcomes behind the fence with people graduating from it. But then post-release, it's just not, they're not getting jobs. So
You have to have pre-screening of charges.
well, the problem is with the barber stylist, nobody's going to take you on in a barbering, like as a barber in their shop with just that barber stylist, because then they'd have to train you, pay for that training, go through all that, do this, when there's other people who already have a master barber that they can pull in because it's so popular. So yeah, so definitely one that we got to work on.
Yeah.
And Ainsley, I think you're next.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. Rochelle, you mentioned that you were looking at job outcomes of this program specifically. So in our last presentation from MLDSC, such a long name, we were only able to look at outcomes overall. We were not able to look at outcomes by program. Is that something that the Department of Labor has? Are you guys able to evaluate workforce outcomes by program? Because I think that would be super helpful for this commission if you guys are able to do that.
I'll defer that to John Ainsley.
I think, John, isn't that the one that we haven't released yet?
So Ainsley's question, the answer is yes. Can you have it? No, not right now. We're working through some of those questions. To be honest with you, we don't want to. I'll give you an example, like specifically with barbering. We don't know if that's just barbering that we have that problem in. We need a little bit more data analysis before we feel confident that this is information that we want to share as fact.
And that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for clarifying that. Is that something just like for my own, like if GoCap is going to, get that data use agreement with the Maryland Logistics Data Systems Center, are you guys working with them, or is that Department of Labor, like where is that house? Because it might be everywhere. So
for what it's worth, the entire initiative, I would say, is equal parts labor, DPSCS, and MLDS. GoCap, unfortunately, or fortunately, is what we would consider administered by the governor's office and has the right to get involved in whatever they would like to. But very specifically, MLDS is probably the place that you would direct the inquiry to, because they are the gatekeeper of who has access to the information and who does not. That would be my recommendation.
And if I'm not mistaken, John, I think the governing board would have to.
They have to vote. Yeah.
They'd have to vote all that.
That's LDS. You got it. Yep. And for what it's worth, Ainsley, a lot of it is political. So throw that GoCap political muscle behind it, and let's see what we can get.
thank you.
That's a good point.
You have your hand up to make another comment, or you kind of covered what you wanted to say?
That actually is what I was going to cover. So thank you.
Perfect. Okay.
I think, Diane, I think that's a good point. The commission can only do so much, but we can give it to GoCap and other people. And it's nice that we have 3 delegates on the commission, and we can bring it up in hearings and stuff. So I see part of our role as a commission to make sure we pass on the information we find to the proper place that can get, might be taken care of, or some of the steps can be made.
Great. Adam, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I'm wondering, for the 300 hours of post-release training for the barber program, who's responsible for setting those requirements?
So the requirements, go ahead. John, did you want to field it?
No, you go ahead. My question is different.
So the requirements, and this is something, this is an interesting time for this to come up, because we've been talking about this at the Correctional Educational Council, and we've had conversations interagency between labor and DPSCS. So the requirements have always come from MSDE, especially as they pertain to CTE courses. However, in our most recent discussion with them, they indicated to us that because correctional education is a specialized educational program, that there is room, flexibility for us to determine how we want some of these hours to look. So that's one thing. The other thing, though, is that when it gets to the diminution credits, then that becomes a separate conversation. So it is a very complex issue around the hours, and I'm sure Danielle, John, others can weigh in.
Yeah, because I think Danielle, correct me if I'm wrong, you said something about like they have 900 hours of training inside.
It depends on the program, but most of them are 600 hours. And by law with Comar, if they want to get diminution credits, it specifically states it's only for a 600-hour occupational training program. So that means that if the hours are changed by correctional education for the better of the program, but if it is, then that law in Comar, they would not be able to get the diminution credit. So we would have to. One of the things that we were talking about is how can we change that law, that Comar law, to fit what we want to do with the hours within the program. So,
can you explain that a little more in detail? I mean, okay.
Yeah. What does that mean?
240 mandated days for school, but that's separate.
That's completely different. There is a Comar law for diminution credits. So basically credits that they get at the end of their sentence to get out early, right? So
Right.
it takes off their sentence. They have a year left and they got 600 diminution credits or, or 6 months of diminution credits. 6 months falls off and they are now have 6 months left before release. So if they get a level 4 certificate, so that's the intermediate high, it is specifically stated in COMAR, they get, depending on their felony, it's like 40 to 60 credits. And then the GED, same thing, 40 to 60, depending on felony. 600-hour occupational training program. So it must meet that 600-hour minimum for them to get the credits for that occupational program. Then there's an AA degree they get the credits for. BA degree, credit-based college certificate program. So it is very specifically stated in.
Can you send out send it to Ainsley Mayor, send it to everybody in this commission if they want it?
I can send Ainsley what the COMAR law. Yep.
Yeah, because we talk about it all the time, and I don't have the specifics on it. And I know we were very much involved with getting that law passed a few years ago. Okay, I'd like to see how it was implemented, because that was a big question about how many diminution credits you get for various programs. So if you'd send it, it'd be terrific. And also, Diane, I'm having a printer problem. So if you would do me a favor, and you've been typing a lot of stuff in here, and then send me a copy of it, send it to Ainsley too at the end.
Ainsley's doing it on the whiteboard.
Okay, all right.
She's
So
doing writing the notes in there. Yeah.
okay, good. Because
I'm thinking that if it's all right with the group, from our conversation under C, creating returning citizen-friendly policies across state agencies, and I think in that statement we could add things such as licensure, so that they're aware of the licensure requirements. You okay with that?
yes.
Okay. Is there anyone else that had? I'm looking at the chat here too. Anyone else that had their hand up that had another question or comment?
I guess I'm wondering what diminution credits have to do with the 300 hours of post release training.
It doesn't have anything to do with the post-release training, but what we're talking about though is that they are not going to want to get into a program that is less than 600 hours if they're not going to get those credits.
No, I'm saying that somebody said that there's 300 hours of post-release training that is required.
They do 900 hours of training in the barbering program. It's a 900-hour program behind the fence. In order to get the barbering license, they got to do another 300 hours. What is it, 1,200 total, right, Rochelle?
Yes.
Yeah.
Who is responsible for making it, requiring it to be post-release?
Well, because we have some restrictions in the fence, for one, because we have to have some of the stuff they have to do in that 300 hours has to do with chemicals, razors, things like that they can't have behind the fence right now. Even if we approve that, though, they can't. I don't think they can get the license by the license regulations if they're actually currently incarcerated, right, John? Yes. So they would not be able to get the regular barbering license behind the fence anyways.
Sometimes they require work-based learning too. So just like with cosmetology, you have to have some stuff actually in a real location, an actual.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, it's got to be like a hands-on type thing.
I hate to say we're making some assumptions on what Adam's question is, though. Adam, are you wondering who sets the hours required for the license? It is the board that sets the hours required to get the license. And the only difference in the breakdown, I think Danielle was pretty clear on why some happens pre, some happens post.
Well, there's a little
actually just really quick, see, it actually took a long time to get them to just approve that barber stylist for the behind the fence. I know Dr. Barron worked a good bit with the licensing board, and so.
But it also gets complicated because you got the board, the barbering board, cosmetology board sets the hours and the requirements. But then, as mentioned, MSDE has some role in it as well with CT programs, and so, and then they say, what's a special program? So corrections, you make so there's a multi-layer thing going on here.
Yeah, and Adam, I guess it's fair to say as well, since we actually run apprenticeship, which is similar. It's a thing you do, and once you complete the thing, you get the license at the end, and it's guaranteed. With licensing and most occupations, it's not guaranteed. You can do all the hours and then put the application in at the end and not get it. And I really think that's the piece that needs to be fixed, but that's way beyond anything that labor or DPSES will participate in. I feel like it should be set up so that if they follow and complete the entire regimen required to get the license, that license should automatically be conferred. Because again, that is a huge waste of time if you do all of that only to be denied for a thing that we knew of 1,200 hours ago.
Yeah, that's why it seems like we're like right at the finish line with it, but we just can't get across it.
Yeah, it's a board decision. Unfortunately, we don't manage the boards. Yeah. I'm sorry, this division. The Division of Occupational and Professional Licensing actually does live within the Maryland Department of Labor, by the way, in case we wanted to. I'm happy to bring on the assistant commissioner if we wanted to better understand why that particular situation exists as well. So just let me know.
This might be something that the commission, now it's been extended, can spend some time with at a certain point, in depth, because I think what we want to do is identify a lot of issues with some detail for our preliminary report, and then go on with some recommendations in the end, and put other stuff off for more longitudinal work. But I think this is a real good example of how intricate some of this stuff can be, and that we need to raise those issues. We have a unique position to be able to take them back and forth and up to GoCap and back to labor or whatever, I think, and to the legislature, because this is where it originated, the commission and the legislature. So I see this, just one more point. I think and this will definitely be an issue I'd like to put in the June report that we put in the, I'm talking about 5-10 pages. I don't want too much detail on issues, but every one of these three committees, CTE, higher ed, and ABGD special ed, has a list of issues. I think we might want to highlight some with some detail in the interim report. At the end of the year, we might want to grab a couple of these issues and really put them in detail for recommendations. It'll be a decision of the commission ultimately. So, I mean, that's my thinking, just to let you know where I'm looking to take all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments or questions? I think some of these examples have been really helpful. And probably a lot of the commissioners may or may not know the specific inside the fence examples or the outcomes that are impacting the employment data, which is why partly the employment data is so not good. So anything else? Okay. And Richard, I think this was your first time here. I know this was a lot of information coming your way. I know you know a lot from your past lives, but any comments or questions or clarifications that might be helpful for you?
No, I've been on a couple of these and I'm taking it all in, but I'm a huge fan of reentry programs, because what we found out, especially when we're in Baltimore, especially post riots, is actually implemented reentry programs that greatly benefited those coming out, and it helped immensely to give them the tools when they're coming out that they probably didn't have prior, and it probably greatly reduced the recidivism level. And I see this, and I know we have to go by Comar, and but I like the fact that, we're looking at specific training programs that are probably best suited for those coming out. We're talking about cosmetology, barbers, and whatnot, mechanical work and whatnot, and
A lot of the construction.
yeah, but that's genius, because it provides them a trade when they come out. It's just I'm looking at it now, and I think the biggest obstacle we're going to have, and they've talked about it, is ensuring that we have the instructors that do it, and the time that they do it, and making sure that we're following up with those that are going to attend training to go and whatnot. But this is a great tool for the toolbox that I can see they can greatly benefit from. And kudos, this is wonderful.
And I think a lot of people on the commission, I will continue to reemphasize it, is the research is showing us that what you're talking about, Richard, is if we do real training and getting people into jobs, the recidivism rate drops. So education, and it doesn't matter if it's higher ed or it's CTE or even just getting your GED, that has an impact on later recidivism rates. And the
Right.
more we do this and the more we provide these programs, the better. I mean, it may seem like, oh, if they only get their GED, but they get a job training, it might not succeed. Well, for some people, they never ever thought they could graduate from high school, and it has a whole psychological thing for a lot of them, and
Yeah.
it opens up opportunities when they get out. So I want to
Yeah.
put that always into the preliminary of our reports. That it does make a difference, education, all these things. And that's where we're focusing on expanding all this stuff as much as possible.
The U.S. Department of Labor's reentry programs, they're one of their main things besides service delivery is data collection, and all those items are what they sell to Congress to keep the funding going. Like for the Second Chance Act, for the reentry programs, it's all about data. Service provision is important, but when it comes down to it, they want to see the data first. So they spend a lot of time and a lot of effort in making sure that data is correct. But the systems are challenged just like the state ones are. But it's so important. So anyway, anything else there? Otherwise, we'll move on. Ainsley, you want to talk about James, the data with James?
Yeah, I'm actually wondering if Danielle wants to talk a little bit about the meeting with James Bowden, the data person.
Oh, I think that was, you guys had talked to him about possibly looking at the CE student data and stuff like that. I think that still needs to be worked out with Rochelle
Okay.
and John to figure that out. I don't know if he has contacted them yet or not.
And with Ainsley out next week, if you want to do it after, so Ainsley and I and anybody else who wants to do that, I guess I have a question or two. If we do this with James, I guess the best way to do this possibly is Zoom, where he can be putting up the screens and showing us what. I mean, does that make sense, or do we need to be there face to face to really understand the data input system that James will demonstrate? What's the best way to do it?
I'll let Rochelle
I-
answer that one.
Yeah, I think he has the best ability to guide us through certain parts that would be appropriate to share in the setting. So I think what I will do next is, when was the timing that I think I didn't understand how quick we wanted that accomplished.
After next week, we could set a time to do it.
Okay, so why don't I just work with him to see what looks good and send some dates? Does that work?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
if you can send it to everybody, because Richard indicated if he's available, he'd like to sit in as well. I
Yeah.
think many others would too.
Yeah, I mean, it would be very, I mean, what I'd like to see, and I'm just anticipating what I think this is going to look like, is that we're looking at an institutional level entry of data. What's happening in the principal's office, what they're getting, enrollment and attendance and waiting lists and whatever else. And I'd like to see how that's put in. Because if we understand that, the better we understand that, the better we can make recommendations or, about how to share data or maybe improve things. I don't know. Because in my mind, everything starts at the program level, the data that we're collecting, and then it comes up to a central place where we can look at it and see how that's used there, and then how we can use it, to help make recommendations and maybe improvements, and how it's shared in interagency. I mean, not all data gets shared or has to be shared, but what we need to share, we will better understand what we can find and what we can use and what we can share and what's useful to us.
So
Danielle?
yeah, I guess I misunderstood what you guys had wanted to do with that. Maybe I'm not understand. I was thinking that it was going to be like Steve, you, Ainsley, and then the labor people and DPSCS, because my concern with opening it up to, or even just the commission people, to like everybody in the work groups and all that, and having 30, 40 some people on this, is that it's going to get a lot of people just firing off different things about different questions and this and that. And I don't think that's the most productive way to do it. It might just be better to have a small group of people looking at it, him explaining, and then maybe labor saying, what they want to do to improve, stuff and everything. And that way, then that can be taken back, to the larger group of what's happening now versus what labor would like to do in the future. That's how I thought that was happening, but maybe I was confused.
Well, yeah, that point's well taken. So, I mean, maybe it's a two-step process. We have a certain group who are looking at it, and then after we do that, we might do something bigger for the whole group. But we need to. I think we need to understand how data is collected at the basic level and how it's put in the system, and then how it's shared. And this is a real opportunity to see it on the ground where it happens first. And we can decide here right now if you want.
I have a quick question.
People can do it.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it all depends on what the goal is. If we simply want James, we call him Jim, if we simply want Jim to do a presentation on just what you said, Stephen, what the data is, how we collect it, and who we share it with, and then he leaves, and as a commission at that point, we formulate what questions we have and then walk through our normal process of submitting the questions so that we can vet them with our legal staff and all that kind of
Pretty
stuff.
much what I was thinking was going to happen, John.
Yeah. I think that's fair. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure that I would limit that particular audience. If it's going to be a one-way presentation by Jim with no questions, I actually think it would be fine to do for the bigger audience. But I also don't think that we should have a bunch of, if we are going to allow questions, I 100% agree with Danielle. Because it will get completely out of control. In our own groups, it'll be 4 or 5 of us, and it gets out of hand from time to time. So that's my only.
And I'm not sure how many people would want to sign up for it in the first place. I mean, that's a big question. Like, of all the commission people or the work groups, people are putting a lot of time into this, and we got another meeting to go to it.
I think that this is the most important thing that everything is data, and every single subgroup that we have, everybody wants data about everything. I think it'll be a hot topic.
Also, we could have it recorded so that if you can't be there or you want to keep the group small, if we could then distribute the recording, people can do that as they want.
I'm with you. Yeah. And again, I think that it's a two-step thing, like Danielle, alluded to. I think it's a presentation on what it is that we have and what we do. And then we, as a commission, over a period of days, weeks, months, we determine what questions we need answers to, and we'll work through getting those answered, which may require more questions after we get those answers. But I think having an understanding, having Jim present the thing will help us tremendously before we start asking questions.
So,
In the interest, go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
So if we're going to do it, but he does a presentation, we don't ask any questions. And you're saying, John, that anybody can watch it if we want or whatever, but then we have a discussion afterward. I don't know. I mean, how do you,
and for what it's worth, the majority of the questions that you have, Danielle and Rochelle can probably answer, but Jim isn't the right one from the lens of asking those direct questions to. I wouldn't trust asking Jim those questions to the full group. I trust Rochelle and Danielle.
Well,
and again,
it's more like my
what we
assumption.
can and can't share.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't Jim's forum. It's Danielle and Rochelle's job to be the gatekeepers of what we are legally allowed to share and not share.
I think he's more of, here's what it looks like. Here's what you do. This is what's put in. This is what's this. But not really asking those, why is this done? Or what can we?
Maybe we need to give him some guidance at the beginning before he does the presentation up that, it's real. We want to know the basic elements that are being collected and how it's collected and who puts it in. And then the question about where it gets shared is beyond him.
Rochelle, I see your hand is up. You have a point to add to this. This would be great.
Yeah, I was thinking that the commission could make a decision as to which space Jim is invited to. And then I think we give him a block of time, if that's 20 or 30 minutes, whatever you deem appropriate. And he's doing a basic overlay of, this is the data system. This is how the information is inputted. These are the data points that can be retrieved from the system. And I think what he could do, John, is because what he does know is what works well versus what doesn't from his technological data perspective. So he can probably do that. And then he would leave, and then members could then discuss, and then we can field those questions that we can answer, or we can take questions back to Jim and be responsible for bringing that back to the commission.
And for what it's worth, Rochelle, I think that's perfect. I'll give you a very specific example of what I'm worried about. Jim's been around for a long time. A lot of what we can and can't do is all political leaning. There's going to be a delegate on that call that made a decision at some point in the past, and Jim could say, Delegate XYZ said that we shouldn't be able to do that thing, and that's just a complete disaster for what we want to accomplish with this group.
So each work group has, well, let me say this. I think every work group would be interested. I think the ABGD, special ed, CTE, workforce development, 2 groups are most interested in what gets entered. And I mean, so we could say, well, we'll have a joint meeting, because so we can have we don't, some groups meet monthly, some are almost like bi-weekly or something. We could decide to have a special meeting just on this with the work groups. And then if somebody really wants on the commission to join it, knowing that we're not going to ask him questions, we're going to talk about it afterward.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, we could care less who the audience is if it's a one-way presentation. It's just the question and answer period. We 100% need to be a much smaller group.
Yeah.
Hey, Adam?
If you want to have him involved in question and answering, 5 or 6 people maybe.
Well,
I guess I'm just wondering, like, what the commission was put on to do a job, and now information, it seems, is being gate kept. And I believe that this administration is all about transparency. So I don't see what the issue is with the commission asking questions about getting the data that this commission was put in charge of to get.
I can answer that question. As soon as we say, why don't we, it becomes a subjective answer. And this group should be privy to the facts, not the opinions. And unfortunately, that literally
Who makes
is
that decision? I don't understand.
I'm making it right now. I guess it lands on Steve, but it's up to me as to whether or not we allow Jim to join. But for what it's worth, I believe that the deputy secretary for the division is the one who actually was the person invited to this particular group. I shouldn't be here. Rochelle shouldn't be here. We are in for the deputy secretary because of his level of discretion that he allows. This group did not invite the frontline technicians who run this stuff for a very specific reason. So again, I just want to make sure we keep it to the facts and we eliminate the opinions and subjective material, and we're happy to filter that stuff. But Adam, if you have a question, ask us. I'm not going to simply tell you no. Whatever you want to know, I'm happy to provide you with some information, but I will not be lending my opinion of the character of a delegate or a representative on why I thought they made a decision. And no, I don't think that is the reason for this particular group.
That's very assumptive of everybody here. That's very assumptive that we would ask those questions. I don't think that you should be telling people what they will be saying during an instance. That's
I share Adam's concern. I mean, I think we've been pretty. I think this commission, and I want it to be. I mean, if I have anything to say, but I want it to be very open and and transparent. And I think people have been very objective for the most part. I don't think we've gotten into any, real political fights and things. I think we're trying to find out, okay, what's being collected, how is it being handled, how's it being used. And this is one of the nitty gritty ones that I think the commission members ought to understand is how data is collected, what data is collected, and then that gives everybody a better understanding of everything else.
We're willing to provide that information, Stephen. What and the what it is, absolutely. We're okay with that, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be. We're not going to be sharing names of students and things like. We're going to say this is how you put stuff in. This is what we collect, and then after we see how that system works, and he doesn't have any real decision making authority over what happens to it. That's among us. But then when we get after that presentation, we can have a very open discussion of all kinds of stuff that, I think Adam's right about, and if we ask a question, why isn't this used? Why? That's a good question. And then we can understand it better because, there are political things. There are privacy things. There are limitations, et cetera. We got our own silos, unfortunately, sometimes, and we need to break through them a little bit. I think those are all legitimate questions. I think we can bring in Jim, whatever group, and tell everybody ahead of time, let Jim make his presentation. If you have a question, if there's a question about something technical, you can ask it, put it in the chat box or something, and we'll see if we can answer it. So not to interrupt him. I mean, maybe you could I don't know if it's the best to have him put a slideshow together, PowerPoint.
Why don't we take some of these details offline as we're planning this? And in the interest of time, Ainsley, would you like the last word?
Yeah, thank you. I was just gonna say it sounds like we probably need to do a little bit more planning around this. So we'll definitely follow up and work out the details. Our next meeting is going to be May 29th at 10 a.m. And at that meeting, hopefully Dr. Stur and we're going to create that little interim report of everything that's going on and all the issues that we've raised and go over that then. So we can have that.
The CT meeting is when?
May 29th at 10 a.m.
Yeah, it's on your agenda as well for us, for this work group.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think in the meantime, we'd like to maybe talk and to see if we could get John arranged before that, to start talking with Rochelle and John Feaster and getting a date with James Bowden to do the presentation. I think we could probably do that before our next meeting. And I would ask the chairs, Diana and Andrea, and then the ABEGD is Andrea and Ainsley and me, to set that meeting up and then put a note out to everybody. These are the dates. Can we do it? Who wants to attend, and set the parameters. So we'll get back on that.
All right.
But before the 29th, I think we'd like to have James Bowden do the thing.
Yeah. Anyway, well, thank you all. I'm sorry we're running a little late, but the discussion was important, I think. So we appreciate that. And we'll see you next time, if not before. And thanks again for coming and your input.
Okay.
See ya.
Thank you all.
Bye.